I'm Mar, and this is my opinion. As many of you know, rock is my favorite music genre. While I tend to favor the more complex and melodic styles, I do enjoy a simple hard riff from time to time.
Punk would fall into that zone, and by extension, the focus of today's video. The Devil's Reign is an album released in 2011 by legendary horror punk band The Misfits. Following the departure of vocalist Michael Graves and drummer Dr. Chud, Jerry only began singing in addition to playing bass. This, along with the introduction of guitar player Dez Cadena, led to the departure of his younger brother Doyle, who had been the Misfits' guitar player for most of their original and second incarnations. Jerry plunged ahead, recruiting Marky Ramone to play drums on an anniversary tour and cover album. Ramone departed a few years later and was replaced by Robo, a drummer from the band's early years. With him, the trio recorded a single entitled Land of the Dead, with lyrics inspired by George Romero's film of the same name. This recording eventually led to a new album, although Robo was swapped out on drums over visa issues.
While it would be fun to discuss each song individually, that would make this video much longer than necessary, so instead I'm going to just discuss the album's elements as a whole. What works, what doesn't, and my overall thoughts and feelings. This is The Devil's Reign.
Production-wise, the album is top tier for an independent record. Whereas the Danzig songs are done live in 1 to 3 takes, here, like with Graves, the songs benefit from multiple takes and editing. However, whereas the Graves duology keeps the tracking, editing, and musical layering simplistic, only in the gang multi-layer their work, creating a double-edged sword. On one hand, it creates an interesting sound. Punk meets classic 50s rock and roll a la Dion, Elvis, and Jerry Lee Lewis. But it creates a cluttered sound that is hard to recreate live, especially the guitar licks. Father, my favorite track on the album, has a sweet jam solo during its final minutes, but since Dez was the only guitarist at the time, it was skipped over in favor of maintaining a rhythm. A shame considering the faster live tempo would have added intensity. Speaking of which, that is another element missing from most songs when compared to the previous albums, which I attribute more to the mix. Dez doesn't play the same way as Doyle, but being an experienced punk guitarist, he can kill the strings when needed. This is evident in live performances, and the first Only Era album, Project 1950. The mixing on that album was far more simplistic. It had multiple instrumental parts, but they were far less intrusive. What makes it sadder is that both tracks on the Land of the Dead single were mixed more in line with 1950, but for their inclusion on the album were re-recorded and, in my opinion, cleansed.
To be perfectly honest, every time I redo my iTunes library, it's the single version that I slide in. I find it much more pleasing to the ear, even if Jerry's vocals are a little shakier.
Which brings me to Jerry Only's vocals. While no one trashes the man on bass, you either like or hate his voice. There's not much middle ground. I consider myself a member of the like group. Sure, his voice isn't as emotional as Graves or dark as Danzig's, but for the retro punk sound of his era, it fits. Live, he can be shaky, but you can't deny his passion, and I'd rather see a punk singer shaky than resort to lip syncing, which makes the vocal manipulation on several tracks painful. It's just as distracting as the multi-layering mix, if not more so. At least that has a musical influence reason for existing, even if taken overboard. It's only there to make Jerry's voice sound better, less raw in comparison to the music. That is vocal sterilization. Jerry's raw voice worked on Project 1950, it worked on Land of the Dead. Heck, it even worked on the title track in The Black Hole. Why is it taboo elsewhere?
If I were to hazard a guess, someone said something to Jerry that made him rethink the vocals he had recorded, which when combined with artists usually being the harshest critics, resulted in the final mix.
These two flaws aside, the album is enjoyable. Some songs are stronger than others, but that's a given for an older act. The high marks are the title track, The Black Hole, Father, Ghost of Frankenstein, which some fans somehow think is about Doyle even though the lyrics obviously connect back to the Universal film, and Jack the Ripper, which features one of Dez's 2 vocal performances, along with one of my favorite rock solos. I gather, Dez wrote the song for another project that fell through and carried it over to the Misfits during recording sessions, which explains the passionate playing and more simplistic mix. He isn't a bad singer either. Shame he didn't get to show off his lead chops on more songs, other than the occasional Black Flag cover. Vivid Red, Dark Shadows, and The Mummy's Hand are enjoyable, with decent hooks and lyrics, but come across as filler songs. Nothing wrong with that, but Paranoid they are not. Cold and Hell and The Monkey's Paw just fill up track space. The two Dead tracks I've already given my thoughts on, but if you're unfamiliar with their single incarnations, they're okay. Lyrically, the album is what you expect of the Misfits, each song focused on something horror-related from pulp culture, from movies to alien abduction. Like the music, lyrical quality varies throughout. When the words work, they flow like a blood river. When they fail, chuckles and groans are to be had. Cold and Hell is the best example. While decent musically, lyrically it is tired and nothing but filler. It's cold in hell. It's cold in hell, they say. It's cold in hell and it's endless winter. With that said, even the weakest songs have their charm, making listening to them at least bearable.
While no masterpiece, The Devil's Reign is a decent effort from the only era.
While its flaws might easily turn fellow rockers off, which I completely understand if it does, I enjoy the album. The mixing could have been tweaked and a few of the tracks could have been cut, but what works, works. With the original lineup reuniting for 2 shows and speculation about a possible full tour, this might be the last album of the only era. If so, it's a decent end note, but no masterpiece.
I'm Mar, and this has been my opinion. If you're a fan of the video, you can always subscribe down there and follow me on the below social media platforms, and stay tuned for some more videos.